Chapter 5, The Layers of Deception. The city smelled different now. Colder, somehow. Louder. Like every inch of concrete was whispering secrets Selene had ignored for too long. She hadn't told Julian she was leaving. She hadn't told anyone. She'd booked a last-minute hotel under her maiden name, used a rideshare app that didn't track familiar addresses, and walked into the city like a shadow retracing her former life. The official story, even to herself, was that she needed to retrieve a few personal belongings from the penthouse she once shared with Damon. But she wasn't here for clothes. She was here for answers. The apartment was too clean. Sterile, actually. Like Damon had swept the place not of dust, but of memories. Their wedding photos were gone. Her slippers by the door, gone. The book she'd left dog-eared on the nightstand, replaced by a cold glass sculpture that hadn't been there before. She took what she needed, some documents, a few personal journals, but then she headed straight for Damon's home office. It had always been locked. Now she knew the passcode. His ego wouldn't let him change it. 11:03, his birthday. Inside, the room looked undisturbed, a perfectly arranged facade. But Selene had learned to see between the lines. She went straight for the bottom drawer of the walnut desk, one she knew he kept private, locked. She crouched, using a slim nail file to jostle the latch until it gave. Her hands trembled as the drawer slid open. Inside, a burner phone. Sleek, black, taped underneath a leather planner. She turned it on, no passcode. Just 7 saved voicemails. Her stomach flipped. 5 were blank or garbled. 1 was from a blocked number, heavy breathing and static, impossible to decipher. And then the last message. She pressed play, a woman's voice, shaky, frantic. Damon, it's me. I know you said not to call, but something's wrong. Lysander, he's been watching me. I think he knows about the file, about the money. I'm scared. If something happens to me, please don't let them cover it up. I'm going to the marina, the locker, the one you said was safe. You promised. The message cut off. Selene sat in stunned silence. Aria's voice, alive, desperate. The message was time-stamped, April 17, 10:42 p.m., hours before she vanished, and the most damning part, it was sent to this phone, not Damon's public phone, not his office line, his secret number. He'd kept it, hidden it, protected it. Why? Selene transferred the recording to a flash drive she carried for her research. Her hands shook as she slid it into her purse, but her instincts were already prickling. Something was wrong. Too quiet. The air in the room had shifted, ever so slightly, like someone had breathed just behind her. She stepped into the hallway, every nerve on alert. The front door was cracked open. She hadn't left it that way, and the elevator lights were blinking. Someone had just left. Selene ran to the door, locking it again, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her palms. She double-checked every room, the office, the kitchen, the bedroom. Nothing taken. But her laptop, left on the desk, was still warm. She hadn't used it. She left the apartment within 10 minutes, carrying only what mattered, drove straight to her hotel, checked in, locked the door, bolted it. But that night, while she was brushing her teeth, a soft click echoed from the front of the room. She turned off the faucet. Another click. The latch, slowly sliding. Selene moved fast, grabbing her phone and flash drive, ducking into the bathroom and locking it behind her. Her breathing was shallow, erratic. From the other side of the hotel room, she heard footsteps. Then a voice, low. Male. Nothing here. She's gone. Then the door opened again, closed. Silence. 10 minutes passed before she dared emerge. Her hotel room was untouched. Visibly anyway. But the air felt violated. They hadn't come to steal. They'd come to warn. Journal entry day 17. This was never just about betrayal. This is a cover-up. Someone powerful, dangerous, wanted Aria erased. And now they're watching me. Damon may have loved her, may have even tried to help her. But he didn't protect her. And I don't think I can trust anyone who stood by in silence. Selene left the city before sunrise. By the time she reached the coast, her fingers were blistered from gripping the wheel and her throat sore from holding back tears she refused to shed. She thought of Aria's last words. The file. The money. The marina. Someone had silenced her. But Selene? She was just getting louder. Selene stood at Julian's kitchen window, cradling a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Outside, the wind churned across the sea, dragging mist inland like fingers through gauze. It had been 3 days since she'd returned from the city. 3 days since she'd nearly been caught snooping through Damon's secrets. She hadn't told Julian everything. Not yet. But the flash drive sat in her bag like a loaded weapon, and she wasn't sure if sharing it would protect him or put him in more danger. Julian came in quietly, a sketch pad under his arm. His sleeves were pushed up, revealing paint-streaked forearms. There was a bruise just above his wrist, dark and fresh. "Where'd you get that?" she asked. He looked down, surprised. "Dropped a canvas. I'm clumsy." She didn't believe him. Not entirely, but she let it slide, for now. Later that evening, they sat on the floor of her cottage, papers, photos, and notes spread between them like puzzle pieces from two different sets. Selene hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out the flash drive. "I didn't tell you everything." Julian said nothing, just listened, patient and still, as she played Aria's voicemail for him. His expression didn't change much, but when it ended, he whispered, "She was pregnant." Selene's head snapped up. "What?" Julian pointed at the audio file's transcription where Aria said, "Lysander, he knows about the file, about the money." She wouldn't say that unless she had leverage. Aria didn't have family money. She lived in dorms. The only reason she'd have a file tied to money is if she was holding proof of something or someone. Selene frowned. "That doesn't explain the pregnancy." Julian reached for another page, a photo Selene had found in Damon's desk of Aria in a flowing sundress, standing on a pier. "Look at the way her hand is placed," he said, tapping the image. Protective, just below her abdomen. She hadn't noticed it before. But now, "Oh my God," Selene whispered. She was hiding it. They cross-referenced Aria's last known movements with local reports from the same time frame. No official missing person report had ever been filed. No press coverage. Just silence. But they found something else. A name buried in an old fundraiser program for a gallery event 5 years ago. Lysander Roth. Julian's shoulders went rigid. "I know that name," he said. Selene waited. "He runs a real estate firm in the city, but he's more than that. He's old money. Caldwell money, the kind of man who shakes hands with politicians and smiles while knives go in your back." Aria said he was watching her, Selene whispered, that he knew about the file. And if she was carrying a child? Julian met her gaze. Maybe it wasn't Damon's. The room felt colder suddenly. Aria, silenced, possibly pregnant, involved with two powerful men, one who loved her and one who might have feared her. The next day, Julian was attacked. Selene found him on her porch just after dawn, blood trickling from a cut on his temple and his left hand trembling as he held a towel to his side. "They came to the studio," he said, voice thick. "Two men, no names, no warnings, just fists and a message." She helped him inside, panic rising like bile in her throat. "What message?" Julian winced. "Stop asking questions about ghosts." That's what they called her. A ghost. Selene pressed her palm to her mouth, trying to swallow the wave of nausea. This was real. Too real. She cleaned his wounds as best she could. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but fury. Someone was trying to erase Aria again, and now they were trying to erase them. That evening, as the fog rolled in off the water, Selene stood outside the cottage, staring out into the thick gray veil. "You should leave," she said when Julian joined her, voice brittle. He didn't respond right away. "I've already lost someone I couldn't protect," he said finally. "I'm not walking away from this." She turned to face him. "You don't owe me anything. I know." His voice was quiet. "That's why I'm still here." Her heart stuttered. She looked away. The space between them was charged, thick with all the things they weren't saying. His protectiveness, her reluctance, the bruises on his body, the cracks forming in her heart. Julian stepped closer, not touching her. "I'm not asking you to trust me," he said. "Just don't run before you let yourself feel something again." Selene wanted to tell him she wasn't ready, that she was broken, that she didn't believe in second chances, not for hearts like hers, but instead she just whispered, "I'm trying." Journal entry, day 20. He bled for this, for Aria, for me. There's a part of me that wants to crawl into his arms and believe the world can be kind again, but I don't know how to fall without losing pieces of myself. Still, when he looks at me, I don't feel like a wreckage. I feel seen, and that might be the most dangerous thing of all. The marina was silent when they arrived, empty except for the hum of foghorns and the rhythmic slap of water against the docks. Julian guided Selene past rusted moorings and shuttered boathouses to the far end where a forgotten sailboat bobbed gently in the gray morning light. It had taken weeks of digging, of phone calls under false names and whispers from retired staff and janitors with long memories. But the clue had always been there, in the voicemail. "He'll be at the marina. I left it in the cabin. If something happens to me, tell someone. Please, Damon. I'm scared." Selene's pulse thundered in her ears. Julian found the rusted key exactly where Aria had said, in a sealed envelope beneath the hull's hatch. Inside, the cabin smelled of mildew and faded perfume. Selene moved slowly, her fingertips brushing past a torn curtain, an old sketchbook, a scarf she recognized from Aria's photograph. And then Julian pulled up a floorboard. There, wrapped in plastic and duct tape, was a thin leather folder. Inside, records, emails, DNA reports, photos, the truth. Aria hadn't been sleeping with Damon. She had been in love with Lysander Roth, Damon's older half-brother, the bastard heir of the Caldwell Empire. Charismatic, ruthless, untouchable. Aria's pregnancy had threatened that. Threatened everything. And Damon had helped cover it up. Selene stared at the documents, bile rising in her throat. The email from Aria to Damon the night before she vanished was still there. "He'll hurt me, Damon. I think he already has. You said you'd protect me. I need you to keep your word." And beneath it, an appointment confirmation. Aria Roth, maternal DNA paternity screening, April 3rd, 20XX. The date of her disappearance. Selene sank to the cabin floor, her back against the wall, the folder in her lap like a funeral shroud. She trusted him, she whispered, and he let her die. Julian knelt beside her, his hands clenched. "Not just let her," he said, voice hard. "He helped them erase her." That night, Selene didn't sleep. Instead, she crafted a file. Every document, every piece of audio and video evidence, photos, emails, the truth, painful and indisputable. And she sent it to a contact she'd once written a feature for at the Ledger, the city's most relentless investigative paper. She didn't sign her name. She didn't need to. The next morning, the world caught fire. The Caldwell-Roth empire began to fracture under the heat of scrutiny. Reporters swarmed the estate, protesters gathered outside their headquarters, the media swam in the scandal. Missing woman linked to Empire heir, whistleblower exposes Roth family cover-up, and at the center of it all, Damon Caldwell, pale and hollow-eyed, facing a storm of questions. He didn't deny it. Not anymore. He just looked broken. Because in the end, his guilt hadn't saved Aria. It had only destroyed everything else. Selene didn't watch the news. She walked the coastline instead, barefoot, the wind tugging at her hair. The waves were wild and sharp against the rocks, as if the sea itself was purging something old and bitter. Julian found her sitting on a bench, staring at the gray horizon. "They're calling you a ghost," he said quietly. "Whoever leaked the truth, a ghost who brought down a dynasty." Selene gave a faint smile. "Good." He sat beside her, letting the silence stretch. The wind picked up, catching strands of her hair and brushing them against his shoulder. "You don't want to see him?" Julian asked. "Damon? I saw him," she said. "That night, the moment he said her name, I saw every lie in his eyes, and I saw how long he'd been living with it. There's nothing left to say." Julian didn't argue. She reached into her pocket and pulled out Aria's scarf, faded now, but still soft. "She deserved to be remembered," Selene murmured. "Not buried, not erased. She was someone, and now the world knows it." Julian's hand found hers. He didn't squeeze, just rested there, a quiet offer of steadiness, of presence. Selene didn't pull away. Journal entry, day 36. "I didn't burn it all down for revenge. I did it for the woman who never got to live her truth. And maybe in telling hers, I've started to live mine. I didn't need flames to walk away, just the courage to leave the ashes behind." Chapter 8, A New Flame, Not a Replacement. The morning air smelled like orange blossoms and sea salt. Selene stood outside the new community center, a weathered, sun-bleached cottage turned haven, watching as volunteers carried in boxes of donated books, art supplies, and care packages. The sign above the door was hand-painted in deep plum script, "Phoenix House for Women Rising." 3 months ago, it had been just an idea scribbled on the back of a grocery receipt. Now it was alive, humming with purpose. Miss Rivera, one of the volunteers called, laughing, "We're out of thumbtacks, but drowning in glitter." Selene smiled. "Trade you glitter for grace. Check the supply closet again, behind the art bins." She turned back to the courtyard where a mural was being finished on the back wall, an enormous pair of wings, not angelic but fierce, feathered in fire and gold. At the center, a woman walked forward, her back to the viewer, her posture steady and unbroken. Selene had posed for it, reluctantly. She hadn't wanted to be the face of it all. But the artist, a girl who'd left a controlling relationship with just a backpack and bruised wrists, insisted. "You don't have to look at the past to prove you survived it," she'd said, "but someone else might need to." Selene had no argument for that. She found Julian behind the building, repainting the weather-beaten fence that bordered the garden. He was wearing his usual frayed linen shirt and those paint-stained jeans that should have been retired years ago. The scent of lavender from the herb beds wrapped around them like a second breeze. He didn't see her at first. She watched the way he moved, slow, sure, no flourish, just effort and care. She thought of all the days he had quietly helped fix plumbing, build shelves, clean up after late-night planning meetings. He never asked for recognition, never hovered, never asked where they stood. He simply showed up, consistently, like a lighthouse, not a storm. Selene walked over, picked up a second brush, and dipped it into the paint tray beside him. He glanced over, a small, crooked smile lifting the edge of his mouth. Didn't think glitter management was in the same department as fence duty. "It's not," she said, "but this moment is." Their brushes moved in rhythm for a few strokes. Then Selene set hers down, paint dripping softly into the gravel. "Julian," he stilled, but didn't turn. She stepped closer, brushing her hand along the wooden slat before sliding it down to touch his. "I didn't fall for you because you waited," she said, her voice steady, quiet, or because you were kind, or even because you believed in me when I didn't. He looked at her then, eyes solemn, sun-warmed. "I fell for you because somewhere along the way, I became someone who could love again, someone who wanted to." Julian's throat bobbed. His other hand reached for her face, fingertips feathering across her jaw as if testing the truth of her nearness. "I never needed to be the first," he said softly. "Only real." Selene leaned in, their foreheads touching. The air between them buzzed, not with urgency, but something gentler, earned. When their lips met, it wasn't desperate. It was slow, honest, like two stories that had been written separately for years finally finding the same page. Later that evening, as the center quieted and golden light spilled over the ocean's edge, Selene stood on the balcony watching the sunset. Julian's arms wrapped lightly around her from behind. She breathed in. Not Damon. Not Aria, not ghosts or scandals or pain. Just now. Just this. She picked up her journal, tattered now, its cover smudged with coffee and tears, and wrote the final line she hadn't been ready to write until now. "I thought love died that night. I was wrong. It was just being reborn." Epilogue 1 year later. The sky was the color of ripe peaches as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the sea. The coastal breeze carried the scent of jasmine from the garden beds below and the distant laughter of children chasing one another near the tide. Selene stood barefoot on the porch of the small cottage behind Phoenix House. It had once been a storage shack. Julian had turned it into a home, soft wood walls, open windows, books in every corner, art supplies scattered like wildflowers. Their fingerprints were on everything, but not in a loud way, in a lived-in, deeply theirs kind of way. She watched as Julian helped a group of women in the garden, showing one how to transplant lavender without bruising the roots. He was laughing, sleeves rolled to his elbows, the same worn smile tugging at his mouth, the one that meant he was at peace. Selene turned the ring on her finger, not a diamond, but a moonstone set in silver. She'd picked it out herself. It wasn't about promises. It was about presence, about choosing each other day by day without pressure or pretense. Phoenix House had grown. They now had satellite branches in 2 other towns. A local foundation had offered funding. Selene had turned it down when they asked her to be the face of a campaign she didn't believe in. She wasn't anyone's symbol. She was just herself. That night, Julian cooked, rosemary pasta and garlic bread. They ate outside on the deck, string lights swaying gently overhead. Music drifted through the air, faint and warm. Somewhere down the road, someone was playing a jazz cover on an old radio. After dinner, they sat in the hammock, legs tangled, silence easy. "Do you ever think," Julian murmured, "about how much had to happen for us to find this?" Selene rested her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes. but it doesn't hurt anymore. He kissed the top of her head. That's how I know we're home. She closed her eyes, smiling. Journal entry, Year 1, Day 365. I don't measure time in pain anymore. Not in the names that broke me or the fire that once burned too hot to survive. I measure it in garden beds and healing hands, in laughter without fear, in Julian's paint-stained fingers brushing mine in the dark, in knowing I didn't just rise. I chose to fly. Thank you for joining Selene on her journey of betrayal, healing, and unexpected love. The storm is past, but her story doesn't end here. There are always more layers to uncover, new chapters to write, and love to rebuild from the ashes. Don't miss the next chapter of her story. Subscribe now to stay up to date with Selene's future, where healing meets truth and where love is never as simple as it seems. Until next time, keep searching for the truth beneath the surface.